Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves in the fantasy world of Valeria. You are a Margrave, a military commander tasked with defending the land of Valeria and building magical ward towers at cities. You'll be slaying monsters and activating locations in an effort to gain influence over the 4 guilds. Margraves of Valeria is the 5th standalone game in this series and brings the familiar feel of the previous games. It's a hand-building worker placement game for 2 to 5 players, ages 14 and up, takes 1 to 2 hours to play, and is published by Daily Magic Games. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and then I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototype, and you're going to want to check the Kickstarter project page and the link in the description below this video to see all the final art and components. In Margraves of Valeria, you're trying to have the most points, and you'll mainly be doing this by moving up influence on these 4 different guilds, and as you move up, you're going to get a certain amount of points depending on these different 4 guilds and how many of these icons you have at the end of the game. Now these 4 guilds, this is Worker, Soldier, Shadow, and Holy. And so for example, if this player is here at the end, they're going to get 5 points for each one of these icons that they have in the game. Let's tell you how you can get some of these icons. Now you're going to be purchasing citizens from these different spots here, and these will give you these icons as well that match up with the 4 different guilds, so that'll help you get some of these points for each of these that you'll have throughout the game. Throughout the game, as you go up in influence, you're going to be able to gather some of these privilege tiles, and some of these will have those guild icons on them. And throughout the game, you'll be building your own ward towers in different locations, and those will also have icons that will go towards that final scoring. Now each player has a player board where they're going to store different goods and the ward towers we just showed you. They're also going to start with some citizen cards. We'll talk about how these work in just a moment. And they also have a place where they're going to track their strength, which will help them slay monsters. And this gives you an idea of what the player boards will actually look like in the final product. The game is played over multiple rounds. Each round, each player will take a turn, and when you take a turn, you simply play one of your citizen cards down, and then you have some options. These are the starter citizen cards that everyone starts with, sort of the same ones. These are secret in your hand, but I've placed them out here so you can see what they look like and all the different aspects of them. So on your turn, you're simply going to play one of your citizens to the right of your board like this, and you have 4 possible choices. One of them is to do the pendant actions from top to bottom. Now here just allows you to get sort of 1 good of any type. Now resources in this game are limited to a specific amount depending on the amount of players. Like here we have magic, here we have wood, and up here we have stone. So you can take any one of those with that action. And when you take a resource, you simply put it in one of the open spots on your board. The next one here is to move your Margrave. Now when you move your Margrave, everyone starts here in this location. You can move in any of the white locations down to the next location. So I can move here, I can move down to here, I can move down all the way to here or over there. Now when you do move, you get to take the location's action at the bottom here, and they're all different depending on the location. And here you're going to be able to take a stone. This is where the stones come from in this sort of mountain area over here. Now the last pendant action you'll take here is to deploy a knight. Now the knights themselves essentially are noble warriors who are loyal to Valeria, and they're not to any single Margrave. So any knights in any location on the board are not owned by anybody, and anyone can deploy them and move them around. So if they're on the board, you can move them to any connected location, and then you can take the location action, like in this case, spend a coin to get any one resource. Now there are ways to get knights onto your own player board from the supply, and when you deploy a knight, instead of moving one on the board, you can take one that's from your own player board and place it in your location, and it allows you to take the location action. Again, here, giving you a stone. Now these knights essentially help you slay monsters by giving you an extra strength. Now since I decided to do the pendant actions at the end of those 3, essentially be the end of my turn and it would go to the next player's turn. Now instead of doing these actions when playing one of these cards, you can use the abilities. Like in this case, you'd gain 1 resource and 4 coins. Now coins don't take up any space on your board or any of your storage spots, but then all other players may spend 1 coin to get 1 resource. And they do different things like that. Now instead of playing your single card face up and either taking the pennant actions or the special ability, you can play it face down and take one of these two actions on your player board. This one is the build action. It allows you to spend each of the resources, a stone, a wood, a magic, and a gem, and you can build one of your wards, and it will also give you 3 influence. So when you build them, you'll build them in any open slot you see there and you'll get the reward. Like here you'll get 4 coins, or here you'll get any 2 resources, and so on and so forth. You can only have one of those in each location. But remember that every time you place a ward here, it's giving you these icons towards the influence of these guilds, which will help you score at the end of the game as shown previously. Now remember, when you build, you also get 3 influence, and here we have 2 icons of the soldiers. And when you gain influence, we gain 3 there. We can go up in any combination. We can go all 3 here, or 1, 2, 3. You can spend it anywhere you want. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3. Now to pass this line, you have to spend 2 gold, but you also get to then take one of these privilege tiles. Now these privilege tiles, as you can see, sometimes they do things like, hey, spend 6 gold to get a gem, or you get any one of the goods, plus you get to gain 2 of the knights. This is one of the ways that you get the knights onto your board, as spoken about previously. This one will give you essentially one of the guild icons, like the shadows, which again goes towards the multipliers of points at the end of the game. And when you take one of these, you'd place it in front of you and it would get replaced by another, in this case level 1 from a stack off the side of the board. That'll allow you to move your Margrave twice. Now other than placing it face down and getting that build action, you could place it face down and take this recall action. The first thing you're going to do is discard a citizen from the citizen row. Let's say, for example, another player really wants to get this one on their next turn, so we'll discard that one. Then you'll pick up all of your citizen cards that are on the right of your board, the one we just played, plus the ones on previous turns that we've played. Essentially, it's refreshing your hand. Then you may, if you want to, spend a certain amount of coins to gain one of these citizen cards. So we could spend 3 coins and take this one and add it to our hand. And at the end of your turn, one of the things that happens is if it's open like this, you simply would slide those down, they get a little cheaper, and the newer ones are going to cost more. Now some of the citizen cards allow you to slay a monster. Now you can slay a monster that's adjacent on a dark road from the location you're in. So I could either try to slay this monster, or I could try to slay this monster. Now all of them have a strength that you need to at least be able to spend, and some of them also have magic, which if you remember is one of the resources that you need to spend in addition to strength. So this one has 5 strength. Now keep in mind that we have 2 knights here. Now let's say we also had a knight on our board, and let's say we had 2 strength. Now there's different ways to gain strength over the course of the game. Some of the different citizens will give you strength, also some locations, some privilege tiles, and all sorts of different ways. But let's say we had 2 strength, we had a knight here, and there were 2 knights in the location. You could spend strength, like I could just say, hey, I've spent 2 strength here. I'm also going to spend one of the knights from my board and the 2 knights that are in my location. So that's between these 3 knights, that's 3 strength, 1 for each, plus the 2 I spent, and I will have spent all 5 strength. You then take those knights that did fight for you, and you're going to place them standing up in this hero's tomb. We'll tell you what this does in just a moment. So I was able to defeat this monster. It's going to give us 3 gold and 2 resources of any type, and an influence, moving up an influence track like we showed you earlier. Then this is going to go to the bottom stack of the pile. Now as you go through these different monsters and you defeat them, they're going to go to the bottom. And eventually, as you go through these, you're going to defeat different ones, and you'll come to sort of the land card for this area. This will get discarded. Below that is the Dark Elves, that's the boss. You'll take these cards and you'll shuffle them, and you'll put them down, face down like that, and you'll flip the top one face up. So at some point after you've gotten through all the regular monsters, they'll get shuffled, and somewhere in there will be randomly the boss card. Now at the end of your turn on these hero tombs, any of the standing up ones are the ones you've used this turn. If they help complete a row and or column, you'll get those rewards. So in this case, we'll get 2 strength because we finished this row, and we'll gain a knight. But you could have easily have done something differently, like placed it like this, and maybe have gotten 4 coins instead, or whichever way you want. And then whenever you take that reward, you put them face down. Now this is interesting because sometimes there may have been, let's just say like someone from a previous turn might have had that, and when you come in and you use 1 knight to stand up, you would now finish that row. So you can kind of possibly help other people out or take advantage of what other people have left there as well. Now turns will continue like this until any player has placed their last ward tower, or if you need to refill the citizen deck and there's not enough to do so, or when filling up the privilege tiles, there's not enough to fill that. Then you're going to go to final scoring. Now remember, all the icons that you have where you have ward towers will get added. You then look at all the different wards that you've gotten from your citizen cards and any privilege tiles. And you'd start filling those out on this little score sheet here of the different icons, whether they came from the wards or the citizens or the privileged tiles. And you'd add each one of those up so there's a total, and you're going to multiply that by the points of where you are on that specific guild influence track. For example, here on the worker, we're here at the 3, so it'd be 5 times 3, essentially being 15 points here. And you do that same thing for all the other influence tracks. And so you'd continue to write this out on the sheet. You then look at these different banner style privilege tiles. Each different one starts a set. So here we have 3 different ones. So you basically multiply it by how many different ones you have here. So here we have 3, you multiply it by itself. So 3 times 3. So we have 3 times 3 here, and then we have a second set starting with the blue. It's just 1 times 1. So it's going to be 3 times 3 is 9, 1 times 1 is 1, so we'll have 10 for that. You'll also get 2 points for each gem, and for all your leftover resources, you'll divide it by 3, and all the money divided by 5. And so you just finish that up, and then you'd add it all up. Whoever has most points is the winner. Now I just want to show you just some more flavor of what some of the different citizen cards look like, what they do. And so you can pause the video here and look at some of these abilities if you like. Now I'm going to also show you the monsters from the other 3 lands that I haven't yet shown you. Again, feel free to pause during this moment to read it a little bit more closely. And in all these, I'm placing the boss over on the right. And here is the last of the monsters that I'll be showing you. Well, there you have Margraves of Valeria, and as I showed in the overview, the mechanisms are simple, like playing a card, but you have a multitude of choices, giving the game great depth. Now, if you'd like to see all the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and it will take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure the folks at Daily Magic Games would love your support.